people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Johanna Wonyou, one of Ring IQ's top prospects to watch in the year of 2023, is set to return to action early next month on the 5th. Opposite the ring, unbeaten Simone Salvatori. This is all set to take place on the undercard of Forte versus Grandele, Part 2, the rematch.
Johanna Wonyou sports professional record of 8 wins and no losses with no draws, 2 knockouts.
An identical professional record to Simone Salvatori.
It is.
Sports professional record of 8 wins, no losses, and no draws with 2 knockouts. The same as Johanna.
So on paper, they've got some similarities. It will be in the ring that separation is created.
It's important to note that Simone Salvatori, in spite of sporting an identical professional record to Johanna, she's about 16 years older?
A native of Marino, Lazio, Italia.
Italy, where this fight is set to take place. In that way, Simone Salvatori, she will have home field advantage. Johanna will be the away fighter.
That's the skinny.
Both Johanna and Simone debuted as professionals the same year in late 2020.
Yeah.
Simone has kept a steady schedule of activity, having debuted in late 2020, fought 4 times in 2021, 3 times last year. More or less the same schedule for Johanna. Johanna actually fought 4 times last year, and she's already fought once.
Was last month on the 12th.
Opposite the ring, Agine Kayange.
Racked up a 4th round TKO stoppage.
This fight is being billed as a super bantamweight contest. Super bantamweight, that's 122 pounds. That's where Ellie Scottney, unbeaten up-and-comer Ellie Scottney, campaigns, as well as Ramla Ali, Nazarena Romero.
Nice concentration of talent at 122.
4 separate champions, 4 separate world title holders to choose from.
For Johanna it is. If she secures the W, she's going to be opposite the ring Simone Salvatori.
Statuesque fighter for super bantamweight. Lots of height, lots of reach.
She's a tall drink of boxing.
For a super bantamweight she is. Shows a good stick and good range control with it. Maintaining distance from her opponent, beating those feet.
So pros, what are the cons?
She's a bit stiff, a bit upright. That torso doesn't really move much. And whenever the other girl opposite the ring crowds her, she kind of leaves her chin out there, leaves her chin in the air.
Exposed.
It's right there for a naturally smaller fighter with a good overhand right to capitalize on. A smaller fighter like Johanna Wonyou,
who I think is more explosive than Simone Salvatori.
Simone wants to keep it long and from the outside, staying behind her jab, fighting at a safe distance, straight punches.
Those are her best punches.
Mid-range to inside, however, she does look vulnerable. Mid-range to inside, that just so happens to be Johanna Wonyou's sweet spot.
She can really put them together at that range, at that distance, punch for punch. I'd give the edge in speed to Johanna Wonyou, in spite of being...
She's the smaller fighter in the fight, the smaller fighter with the lower center of gravity, but punch for punch, I think she's got more hand speed and foot speed than Simone Salvatori.
I think she can get in.
I think Johanna Wonyou can slip the straight punches from Simone Salvatori, slip the jab, get mid-range to inside, and work her.
Being a smaller fighter in the fight isn't always a disadvantage. In some situations, it's actually an advantage.
It can be, because that smaller fighter can create a smaller target, a trickier one, and because they've got a lower center of gravity, it's likelier than not that the taller, longer fighter will be caught off balance before the smaller one.
It's an advantage.
So long as that smaller fighter knows how to use their smaller frame to their advantage, and I'd wager that young Johanna Wonyou, she does.
Simone's not a bad fighter. She shows a good jab, and she's coordinated. Good height, good length, but she's basic.
Torso's a little bit too upright. Her chin becomes exposed between shots, between punches.
She's not explosive.
She does seem limited to boxing from the outside, behind straight punches.
Doesn't show much in terms of variety. It's really just a jab in the straight.
Johanna exhibits more variety, and I imagine that the aesthetic of this match is going to look a lot like Johanna's previous fight with Wendelin Cruz.
Landed some really good looping rights in that fight.
Showed good punch placement. Wendelin Cruz, like Simone Salvatori, she had height on Johanna. She was the taller fighter in the fight, but that didn't help.
Saw some real good punch picking from Johanna,
who I think is a lot more athletic than Simone Salvatori. She's a bit stiff, a bit robotic. Johanna, she's loose and limber.
Quick.
She'll get in there. I think she'll slip past Simone Salvatori's straight punches and put shots together mid-range to inside. And because the fight is happening in Simone Salvatori's neck of the woods, that she'll have home field advantage, it behooves Johanna to make it decisive.
Make it emphatic. Make Simone uncomfortable. Crowd her. Rough her up.
Knock her out if you can. Take it out of the judge's hands. You know what they say. You don't want to coast on foreign soil. I like Johanna Wonyou to win this fight, even though they're both unbeaten up-and-comers with identical professional records. What separates them is their ceiling.
Johanna's got more tools.
Lest we forget, she is the younger, fresher fighter by some years, over a decade, close to 2 to be exact. She's 16 years younger than Simone Salvatore.
Interesting particulars in association with this card is that both DAZN and ESPN Plus are registered as broadcast partners.
So I'm not sure how that breaks down. Maybe DAZN will broadcast the fight to a UK audience and some other audiences, and maybe here in America, ESPN Plus will show the card.
Maybe this is supposed to be for the EBU title at 122 pounds.
EBU title, newly vacated EBU title that Ellie Scottney won from Spain's own Mary Romero in her fight.
She's got bigger fish to fry now. She's going to be fighting for the IBF title, the world title.
As young Johanna is making her bones, and I like Johanna Wonyou to win. I like Johanna to win on points. Men's welterweight news. You might have heard earlier today the bombshell news that Amir Khan tested positive for a banned substance, Osterin, in a UCAD test following his defeat to Kell Brook last year, and so has now been banned from boxing for 2 years. Khan already retired following the loss and has insisted his ingestion of Osterin was not intentional.
Osterin is banned by the FDA.
There are some banned substances in the banned list, the WADA banned list, the VADA banned list, UCAD, what have you, that might be easier to come by than Osterin. There's only so many ways that gets in your body.
Hard to imagine that this unintentionally found its way into Amir Khan's system.
Amir Khan's defense following his positive drug test for Osterin was that he believes the most probable explanation is contamination of a supplement or incidental contact with another person. Below is UCAD's detailed explanation of why they accepted it as non-intentional.
A long read.
That really isn't worth sifting through, because in spite of them accepting his explanation as non-intentional, they still chose to ban him for 2 years, and not that that matters because he's retired from boxing anyway. Amir Khan on being banned from boxing after testing positive for Osterin. I've never cheated. I'm a retired fighter. You can see by my performance versus Kell Brook. I lost. If I went in there and knocked Brook out, that's different. I've never cheated in my life.
Losing the fight the way that he lost the fight, losing the fight in one-sided fashion, that doesn't mean he didn't cheat. You know, Ryan Martin,
he lost in one-sided fashion to Tosh Jailer years ago. And after the fight, news broke that he tested positive for a banned substance, a performance-enhancing drug.
just because you lost doesn't mean you didn't use something.
Amir Khan continued, the amount that was in my system could have been from shaking people's hands. I'm a retired fighter, so I've got a 2-year ban now, which is quite strange and funny that they've banned me. I'm already retired anyway.
Making this much ado about nothing.
Even stranger is that Ben Shalom, who promoted the show, has said he found out about Amir Khan's positive drug test and ban on social media today and didn't know anything about it before now. Despite promoting the Kell Brook fight, he added that the BBBOC's Robert Smith told him he only found out yesterday.
The Amir Khan versus Kell Brook fight took place well over a year ago, and we're just now hearing about this, and you expect me to believe that this whole time, Ben Shalom didn't know nothing about it.
Even though he's the one that promoted the show. And Robert Smith, he knew nothing about it either. The head of the BBBOC. Am I hearing this right?
I don't buy it.
Amir Khan added, I don't want to be remembered for something like this. That would hurt me a lot. If people remember me just for this incident, that would upset me because I know it was never done by purpose. Hopefully people believe me.
No, I don't think they will. The ones that remember. Everybody's got a lofty explanation for when this happens. Anyone from Amir Khan to Conor Ben.
Kell Brook said, I heard about it today, when everyone else heard. I'm disgusted. It's been over a year since we boxed. It makes me feel sick. I've got 3 beautiful kids. He's gone in there to try to hurt me. It's a fucking joke.
The joke is that we're just now hearing about this. The joke is that Ben Shalom, both Ben Shalom, who promoted the show, and Robert Smith, after all this time, claimed they had no knowledge of this positive test. It's been well over a year.
And within that year, you've been seeing Conor Benn. You've been seeing the powers that be try to hold both Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn's feet to the fire. All the while, behind the scenes, this was going on. And you're telling me the head of the British Boxing Board of Control knew nothing about it?
Bullshit.
Kell Brook added, it could be a completely different story. I could be in a wheelchair now with him destroying my life or killing me. Because I won, people are gonna forget about it. He could have legally killed me. He needs to pay bad. It's gonna tarnish his career terribly. He's gone in there and got an absolute pasting. He were on these drugs and he still took a massive hitting.
He did.
He's gotta live with that beating for the rest of his life, and he's gotta live with cheating.
He does.
So because he lost the fight, just like Kell Brook said, and because all of this was said to have taken place over a year ago, over a year later, people aren't going to spend as much time on it because he's retired. You're banning a retired fighter from boxing.
Give me a break.
There's more going on here than meets the eye. You'll excuse me for playing conspiracy theorist, but I find it hard to believe that the head of the BBBOC knew nothing about this the whole time he's been holding Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn's feet to the fire. That's ridiculous.
I don't believe it. I don't believe Ben.
I'd sooner believe that both Ben and Robert clandestinely worked to keep this under wraps. Keep it a secret, because it's that much harder to vilify Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn for a fight that didn't happen when this one did.
And how did this get past you? How did Osterin, of all things, not show up in the anti-doping tests beforehand?
But it showed up afterwards. It showed up after the fight. What are you not telling people?
Do you understand how ridiculous all of this is? A year passes by and these guys just found out today?
Can you believe that? That the head of the BBBOC that works in tandem with UCAT and reaches adjudication based on their findings knew absolutely nothing about this until today.
Something's not right here.
Something's not right here. Oddly enough, Kell Brook's trainer, Dominic Engel, he actually believes Amir Khan's story. He's saying he didn't knowingly cheat.
Yeah, Dominic might be saying that, but if you're familiar with Dominic, you'll know that a lot of people, they've been giving him the hairy eyeball about what goes on in his gym.
The whole thing is strange and somewhat hard to believe. Osterin is not a substance that is easy to come by. The fact that Ben and Robert Smith say they knew nothing about this until today, then who did?
Who kept it from you?
What's being done about that? Now Dominic Engel wants to go up to bat for Amir Khan.
This story won't have the same traction that Conor Benn's PED fiasco has because Amir Khan's retired.
The damage is done. There's nothing that can be done about that. His career is over, whereas Conor's is ongoing.
But if you want my opinion, if you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, the whole thing seems strange. Seems very strange to me.
And finally, in men's junior middleweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard, Tszyu plans to fight by June, says Charlo fight is once again delayed to August or September.
Why am I not surprised?
Those of you that have been following the channel the last couple of weeks and the last couple of months will know that I've been skeptical about that fight the whole time. And the fight with Charlo is supposed to take place at the end of August or early September.
Now it is.
As a result of another postponement. Oh, for sure, I'm frustrated. The bloke hasn't fought for 12 months. How long can you keep postponing a fight? Tszyu explained to Nick Walshaw of Fox Sports. I'm not sure how bad his injury is, but the medical reports say that he should be healed. All I can do is focus on myself. I think he understands this isn't an easy fight for him, and so he wants to be 100%,
120% ready.
I think that before he was taking me lightly, saying he was going to beat me with one hand, that he was ready to fight with one hand. Now he knows, though, so he's taking his time. He will try and postpone it for as long as he can.
But he's not at liberty to fight someone else. See, the problem I've always had with this fight is given the duration of time that Jermell Charlo has spent away from the action, and the fact that he has to fight Tim next.
If he doesn't, the brown belt is forfeit, the WBO title, which creates a unique problem because normally, when a fighter's been away for a while and he's coming off an injury, they take in a rebound fight, a tune-up fight. But Tim Tszyu, he's no tune-up fight.
Even though Jermell Charlo's this division's undisputed champion, he's a hard puncher and a skilled fighter, one of the best.
Even if he does have a stylistic advantage over Tim Tszyu, the pressure fighter, these are still less than ideal circumstances to fight him, but in many ways, he doesn't have a choice. He's under orders by way of the WBO, and I wonder what they're going to do moving forward. I wonder what they're going to do now.
The IBF, the WBC, and the WBA, they've been giving Jermell a lot of amnesty. I mean, by way of the IBF, he's got a mandatory challenger in the queue that's been the mandatory challenger for that belt since 2019, since before he even won it. Bakram Murtazaliev.
The IBF isn't stressing Jermell Charlo to satisfy that mandatory challenger. By way of the WBC, you have Coachella's Sebastian Fundora, Jermell's PBC stablemate. He's in the queue the same as Tszyu.
But the WBC's not pressuring Jermell to fight Sebastian Fundora. The WBO, however.
They might. They might decide between now, August or September, that enough is enough, and the WBO title may be stripped from Jermell and awarded to Tszyu. Tszyu, who's now looking to return in early summer against an opponent that is yet to be announced. He says he wants somebody that's going to give him a challenge. I want to keep improving and have that attitude to fear no one, fight anyone. For me, the main factor is growth, staying active, getting another style in front of me, and being able to adapt to anyone.
He's got the right idea. An active fighter is a sharp fighter, a dangerous fighter.
Whereas PBC fighters like Jermell, they don't have the greatest reputation for keeping their fighters active and keeping their fighters sharp. Many of their fighters, and even their champions, come off of these long stints of inactivity. I mean, take Errol Spence Jr., for example.
He's supposed to be fighting Terrence Crawford in June, and the man hasn't fought in over a year.
Tszyu last year, an otherwise active fighter who was a very active fighter before he jumped into bed with the PBC last year, he only fought once, and it doesn't look like he's going to let them affect his schedule this year the way they did last year.
Fuck that.
Fuck them. The show must go on. I'd wager that when he first jumped into bed with those guys, he didn't realize who he was dealing with. You know, it's a big-time American outfit.
Maybe Tszyu and his team weren't all the way clued in as to who they'd be dealing with and what they'd be dealing with.
Not initially, perhaps not, but they're not about to let that stuff waste their time anymore. He's coming off a big win, big knockout, highlight reel knockout win over Tony Harrison in his neck of the woods, and he means to keep the momentum going. Jermell Charlo or no Jermell Charlo?
I don't think they're gonna fight. That's what I've been saying this whole time. I don't think under these circumstances this fight happens.
I maintain my original position that the PBC may be implementing a plan to move some of their guys from 154 up to 160 and some of their guys from 160 up to 168. That's what I think is going on.
I think Jermell's part of that plan.
I think the PBC didn't anticipate that upon his U.S. debut, Tszyu would not only dominate Terrell Gausha, but he'd dominate Tony Harrison.
In Australia.
I don't think when those fights were made, the people at the PBC anticipated that Tszyu would plow through the both of them. I think they were banking on those guys upsetting Tim, and because they didn't, well, that creates a precarious situation.
For them, it does.
They underestimated Tim, underestimated his skills and his power, underestimated his resolve. This is Tim fucking Tszyu!
You motherfucker.
I'm starting to get the sense that between now and August or now and September, the WBO might elect to strip Jermell Charlo of the brown belt and award it to Tszyu because the show must go on.
You've got all the belts and you can't keep holding up the division with this stuff. If you're injured, if your injury sidelines you for that amount of time, label him a champion in recess.
Do something, because something's got to give. This guy literally has all the belts in this weight class.